FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
My first guest, Representative Mike Pence, was in attendance last night, and we were actually discussing him on the show yesterday, and I'm going to follow up with some questions about that. But Representative Pence, good afternoon. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks, Dana. Good to be with you, and good to hear you in Indianapolis.
Yes, it's good. It's good to be in Indianapolis. I tell you, what did you make of the President's State of the Union speech last night? It felt as though for a little bit he was trying to race to the center before he immediately went back to some of the same far-left talking points that we are accustomed to hearing from him.
Yeah, I think you summed it up pretty well. I give the president high marks on presentation, and I appreciated his embrace of some of the traditional pillars of American exceptionalism, as he talked about expanded trade, regulatory reform, lowering corporate taxes. Those are all welcome themes and welcome proposals. What was disappointing, as you suggest, is that the president, made an unapologetic defense of their government takeover of health care, and also called for more spending, even while he was talking about reducing the deficit. And to cap it all off, the president also advocated a tax increase. It hasn't been quite reported that way, but when the president talks about allowing the current tax rates to expire at the end of this Congress, that'll be one of the largest tax increases in modern history. The majority of people that will pay those higher taxes are small business owners across Indiana and across America, and it's hard to see this speech as anything other than some good talk about pro-growth policies on the margins, but at the center, a lot more spending and higher taxes.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and one of the things that he had said also, Representative Pence, is that you hit up on a good point. He was discussing about how to make things better for business while he's also talking about these massive tax hikes. But then he went into class warfare, and I was so hoping that this address was going to be different from the things that he said in the past, and that he wouldn't bring out the tired, disproven argument that it's only the wealthy that get the tax cuts. But he also remarked that these tax cuts are not going to remain permanent. What do you think what effect do you think that has on business? We saw the dollar take a hit today, I think, because of this speech. How does the president even begin to reconcile those two discrepancies in his speech? Yeah,
well, look, uncertainty is the enemy of prosperity. What the president signaled in the midst of a lot, and I want to say again, I thought a lot of what he said was very welcome in terms of its affirmation of pro-growth policies, expanded trade and regulatory relief and reform and tax simplification and tax relief. But for the president to signal, as you said, with that same tired class warfare rhetoric, that he was going to insist on a tax increase on upper-income Americans, and then I think he used phrase or something like it, fair share again. Mm-hmm. All that said to small business owners across Indiana is that in less than 2 years, you're going to see a significant increase in your tax burden. And I think that just has a paralyzing effect on job creators in the city and on the farm.
Oh, absolutely. He also got into education, and one of the things that I know a lot of grassroots folks and myself as well have been watching is this whole Race to the Top program, which seems to be nothing more than consolidating educational control at the federal level, and I think it's very detrimental to local control of education and development. And he wants to spend more money for Race to the Top. What would you advise to the president if you were discussing education with him? How would you address this whole Race to the Top program?
Well, you're talking. We're getting acquainted with your new celebrity in Indiana, but people listening may recall. I actually was one of the few people in Congress that voted against No Child Left Behind. I'm somebody that believes education is a state and local function. Mm-hmm. The federal government's role ought to be resources, not red tape. And for the president to advocate replacing No Child Left Behind with an updated updated bill that invariably would result in more federal intrusion into that province that ought to be closest to communities, closest to parents, I think is I think it's the wrong direction. But I spoke at the Indiana State House a week ago, and I said we're never going to put our fiscal house in order in Washington D.C. unless we not only reduce spending, but that we also begin to divest from the federal government those matters which, under the 10th Amendment, are the responsibility of the states. We need to have a renewal of federalism in this country, and unfortunately, the president in his State of the Union last night signaled exactly the opposite on education.
And wouldn't, sir, if spending was the answer to better test results, because we've had studies that have come out earlier this year that showed that the United States is actually really falling behind other developed countries in terms of science and math. Well, we spend so much per student. Why hasn't that fixed the problem? And that seems to be what Democrats continue to want to do. They think it's a spending problem.
Yeah, they think it's a spending problem, and I'm very enthusiastic about what's happening under Governor Daniels' leadership on education reform in Indiana. Indianapolis has really become, over the last 15 years, a mecca for thought leaders promoting educational choice. I think the only thing powerful enough to cure what ails education in this country is to empower parents with the ability to choose whatever school their child would attend, whether it's a public school, a charter school, or a private school. That's going to be the antidote for what's happening in American education, not more mandates, more red tape, or more federal intrusion.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you too. Who did you go to the State of the Union with last night?
Well, I had the great privilege of sitting with all four of the new Republican members of Congress from Indiana. We all sat together, Congressman Rokita and Stutzman and Bouchon and Young, and we sat on the Republican side of the aisle.
So, God bless you for that. I am so glad to hear a Republican say, you know what, we sat on the Republican side. I'm so glad. I was a little nervous there. I'm like, oh gosh, here I go. I'm going to ask this question. I am so glad to hear that, because I thought it's been absolutely hysterical seeing Republicans on Twitter talk about how it's going to fix all of the partisanship woes by getting a corsage or a boutonniere for some Democrat going to this.
Well, I've been in Congress for 10 years, and I learned a long time ago it doesn't matter where you sit in Congress, it matters where you stand. We're going to continue to stand against the big government liberal agenda of this administration and do what the American people elected this new Congress to do, which is put our fiscal house in order, get this economy moving again, and take the kind of stands that will defend our country and defend our values.
I have a last question for you. Are you going to run for president in 2012?
We've been very humbled by the encouragement we've received around Indiana and around the country to consider higher office. And what I can tell you is that we're nearing the end of a process that we've gone through over the last couple of months to seek counsel and deliberate and do more than a little bit of prayer. And we're going to have an announcement about our intentions and our general direction sometime before the end of the month.
Fantastic. Well, we hope to speak with you again when that announcement is made. Representative Mike Pence, thanks so much. Thanks for having a spine, and thank you for doing what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jenna. Good to be with you.
Take care.